In the months after the world shut down, something strange happened. Stocks soared, real estate exploded, and billionaires got richer, while ordinary people lined up at food banks. You were told it was a rescue, but it wasn't for you. It was never for you. The stimulus wasn't dropped into your hands. It was absorbed by assets you don't own. As the Fed printed trillions, the rich quietly turned that liquidity into power. They bought more homes, more stocks, more control. You got checks. They got empires. And when the music stopped, you were left with higher rent, pricier groceries, and debt you never voted for. This isn't a glitch. It's the blueprint. A machine that prints wealth for the top while asking the rest to borrow just to survive. Welcome to the new economy. One where the rich don't work for money. They print it. You rent it. The story begins with a crisis. In 2020, as lockdowns paralyzed the world, central banks responded with historic aggression. In the United States alone, over $5 trillion was pumped into the economy through stimulus checks, PPP loans, and massive asset purchases. It was marketed as a lifeline for the people, but the real beneficiaries were never the working class. They were the asset holders, the people who already owned stocks, real estate, or entire companies. The moment the money printer roared to life, the game changed. Stocks rebounded at record speed, housing prices surged, and speculative bubbles bloomed across crypto and tech. Meanwhile, wages barely moved. For millions, job security vanished. But for the wealthy, it was the greatest transfer of wealth in modern history. Because when cheap money floods the system, those who own assets watch their portfolios explode. Those who rent, borrow, or live paycheck to paycheck, they drown. The price of entry into the wealth class becomes unreachable. Home ownership fades. Retirement pushes farther. And every dollar you save loses value faster than you can earn it. It wasn't the first time. After 2008, the Fed did the same thing, quantitative easing. But this time the scale was unprecedented. And the lie was louder. We're all in this together, they said. Well, while you were forced to stretch every stimulus check, corporations used their bailouts to buy back shares. CEOs pocketed bonuses. Venture capitalists doubled down on risk. And the inflation? You absorbed it. Through your rent, your groceries, your debt. What was sold as a rescue became a reshuffling of power. The rich didn't just survive the crisis. They weaponized it. And the middle class? It was hollowed out. This isn't capitalism malfunctioning. This is how the system was designed to respond. When the fire comes, it doesn't burn the mansions. It burns the roof over your head. In every empire, there comes a moment when money stops being a tool of trade and becomes a weapon of control. In our time, that moment arrived quietly, dressed as relief. They called it stimulus. They called it necessary. But what they did was print trillions out of thin air, pour it into a system designed to feed asset holders, and watched as the gap between rich and poor stretched into a canyon. In 2020, the Federal Reserve unleashed an avalanche of liquidity. Zero interest rates, $120 billion a month in bond purchases, emergency facilities for corporations, and a historic expansion of the money supply. At the same time, Congress distributed stimulus checks, $1,200 here, $600 there, as if the problems of a broken economy could be solved with pocket change. But this wasn't a rescue. It was an extraction, because every dollar printed didn't flow evenly. It surged toward the top, absorbed by those who already had access: hedge funds, real estate trusts, tech giants, and banks. The result? An artificial boom. The stock market broke records while tens of millions were unemployed. Home prices skyrocketed while evictions quietly ticked upward. CEOs bragged on earnings calls while nurses begged for PPE. This is the anatomy of modern financial warfare. Not bombs, but balance sheets. Not tanks, but stimulus bills written by lobbyists. And when the inflation hit, it didn't hit Wall Street. It hit your grocery bill, your rent, your car payment. What most people didn't realize is that this pattern is not new. After the 2008 crash, the Federal Reserve embarked on a decade of quantitative easing, expanding its balance sheet from under $1 trillion to over 450 cents trillion. The justification? Prevent a collapse. The result? A decade-long bull market that left wages stagnant and asset prices detached from reality. The same script played out again in 2020, but on steroids. For the rich, the pandemic became the greatest buying opportunity of their lifetime. With near-zero interest rates, they borrowed cheap money to acquire everything: land, stocks, entire companies. Meanwhile, you were told to stay home and be grateful for a one-time check. Even small businesses were left to die. While massive chains accessed PPP loans through fast-track banking relationships, your neighborhood diner drowned in paperwork and delays. The system wasn't built for fairness. It was built for consolidation, to take from the margins and deliver to the center, to reward those closest to the printer. And in every round of emergency action, the printer got louder, and the middle class got smaller. The lie they told you was that inflation is a mystery, that rising prices are unpredictable. But the truth is far simpler. When you print money faster than you produce goods, you dilute the value of currency. That dilution shows up not just as higher prices, but as reduced power, economic power, purchasing power, life power. You can work more hours and still fall behind. You can save more, only to watch your future eroded by forces you didn't vote for. Because the rich don't need to steal from you directly. All they need is for you to borrow what they already own. Every mortgage, every credit card, every rent payment is a quiet transfer of power. A reminder that in the modern empire, wealth is not earned, it's extracted. And those without assets are told to invest in a rigged casino. Crypto, meme stocks, housing, speculative bubbles sold as lifelines to a desperate generation. You're not supposed to win. You're supposed to chase. To spend your energy trying to catch up, while the rules change behind the scenes. While algorithms trade faster than you can think. While insiders cash out and call it innovation. And through it all, the one thing that never changes is the direction of the money flow. Upward. Always upward. The pandemic did not create a new system. It revealed the one we already had. A system where the middle class is not just ignored, but harvested. Where crises are opportunities for the elite to expand their grip. Where free markets mean freedom for the rich and risk for everyone else. And now, in the aftermath, you're told to accept the new normal. That inflation is under control. That recovery is underway. But recovery for who? While average Americans face the highest cost of living in decades, corporate profits sit at all-time highs. While first-time homebuyers are priced out, private equity firms buy up neighborhoods. While student loan payments return, tax loopholes for billionaires remain untouched. You didn't fail. The system failed you by design. And it's not over. Because every empire that hollows out its middle class in pursuit of elite enrichment eventually pays a price. Not just economically, but socially, politically, historically. A society where wealth is hoarded and debt is democratized is not a stable one. It's a powder keg. And the fuse was lit the moment we let them turn the money printer into a weapon. What comes next won't be decided by elections or promises. It will be decided by who still believes in the myth and who decides to walk away from it. Because in the end, the most dangerous currency isn't the dollar. It's trust. And once that's gone, even the rich can't print it back. They told you the stimulus was about survival. They told you printing money was a temporary fix, a necessary evil. But what they didn't tell you was that this playbook wasn't written in 2020. It's been recycled for decades. Every time the system wobbles, the same hands reach for the same lever. Flood the top with liquidity and pray it trickles down. It never does. Because in reality, it doesn't trickle, it concentrates. Every round of quantitative easing has created bigger bubbles, deeper inequality, and a middle class more fragile than before. In 2008, they said the banks were too big to fail. In 2020, they didn't even bother pretending it was about fairness. The money flowed fast, to markets, to corporations, to asset holders, while ordinary people waited for weeks just to see a few $100s hit their account. And the damage? It wasn't just financial. It was psychological. People began to realize that no matter how hard they worked, the rules weren't designed for them. That while they were told to invest in education and hard work, in responsibility, the real gains came from proximity to the print. Those who could borrow at zero got richer without lifting a finger. Those who saved were punished by inflation, and those who fell behind were blamed for not working hard enough. But how do you run in a race where the finish line keeps moving? Where your asset class is inflated beyond reach? Where rent takes 50% of your income, and owning a home is now a luxury? The system doesn't just ignore your struggle, it feeds on it, because every economic shock becomes a moment of consolidation. When fear rises, the wealthy buy. When rates drop, they leverage. When liquidity flows, they get first access. And when the music stops, they already own the chairs. The rest are left standing. The cruel irony is that the same tools that were once meant to stabilize the economy, low rates, asset purchases, emergency lending, are now used to entrench financial aristocracy. Central banks no longer just manage currency. They shape class structure. They decide who gets rescued and who gets wrecked. And they do it in the name of stability. But stable for who? For the top 10% who own 89% of all U.S. stocks. For the landlords who raise rent faster than wages rise. For the corporations that use buybacks instead of hiring. Stability for the rich looks like stagnation for everyone else. No upward mobility. No room for error. Just endless borrowing, endless chasing, endless permission to exist in a system that sees you as a liability unless you produce profit. The post-2020 world didn't invent this system. It simply stripped away the illusion. The idea that we were all playing the same game. We weren't. The wealthy were playing Monopoly with printed cash. You were playing survival with borrowed time. And now, they want you to believe things are getting better. But better for who? The Fed is tightening. Rates are up. Asset prices wobble, but not enough to make them affordable. The cost of living is embedded now. It's not a spike. It's a shift. A permanent step up in the baseline of struggle. You feel it in every grocery run, every rent bill, every delayed dream. That's not an accident. That's policy. The rich don't fear inflation, they use it. To lock you out, to raise the bar, to force you to finance your life through them. And every dollar you borrow becomes another chain. Another proof that the empire doesn't need soldiers anymore. It just needs debtors. Quiet, desperate, compliant debtors. You don't need to revolt. You want. You'll refinance. You'll delay. You'll cope. And the cycle continues. Not because it works, but because it works for them. And that's enough. They've convinced you that debt is normal. That borrowing to live is just part of modern life. A car loan, a student loan, a mortgage, a credit card, just tools to build your future. But what they don't say is that these tools were once lifelines. Now they're chains. The economy doesn't grow through wages anymore. It grows through leverage. And who benefits from that leverage? Not you. You borrow, they lend. Out. You pay interest, they collect it. You work harder, they extract more. This is not a flaw in the system. This is the system, designed to reward capital over labor, assets over effort, speculation over stability. It's why your paycheck hasn't kept up with rent. It's why your savings lose value while your landlord's property doubles. It's why the rich celebrate inflation because it inflates their assets, while deflating your purchasing power. They get richer by standing still. You fall behind even when you run. And the most brutal part? They've made you believe it's your fault, that you didn't budget well, that you need to hustle more, that your struggles are personal, not structural. But the truth is simple. The game is rigged. When money is cheap for the rich and expensive for the poor, the outcome is always the same. A permanent underclass living on borrowed time. Entire generations priced out of ownership, locked into subscriptions, memberships, leases, never owning, only accessing. This is how control works now. Not through violence, through dependence. And every solution they offer, buy now, pay later, low-interest loans, flexible financing, is just another layer of entrapment. Because they don't want you to escape. They want you to adapt, to accept that life is subscription-based, that debt is freedom, that chasing is living. But chasing what? A house you can't afford? A retirement you'll never reach? A version of stability that no longer exists? They've replaced the American dream with a treadmill, and every year they turn up the speed. Yet you keep running, hoping that maybe, just maybe, you'll catch up. But you won't. Because catching up isn't the point. Running is. Movement without progress. Effort without escape. Productivity without power. And while you run, they watch. They profit. They expand. Because in this empire, wealth isn't just measured in dollars. It's measured in your exhaustion. The more tired you are, the less you resist. The more confused you are, the less you ask. And the more debt you carry, the more predictable you become. That's not a side effect. That's the plan. And it's working. You were told the system rewards hard work. That if you put your head down, follow the rules, stay disciplined, you'll rise. But somewhere along the way, that promise broke. Not with a loud crash, but with a quiet shift. The ladder didn't disappear. It just got pulled up. What's left is a generation chasing shadows, told to be grateful for jobs that don't pay enough, degrees that cost too much, and homes they'll never afford. Meanwhile, the people who shape policy, who control capital, who sit closest to the money printer, they don't climb. They float, protected by assets, surrounded by subsidies, disconnected from the very system they pretend to manage. When inflation rises, they shift portfolios. When rates change, they refinance. When crises come, they liquidate and wait. You tighten your budget. You skip meals. You delay dreams. And through it all, you're told things are getting better. Recovery, stability, growth. But the only thing growing is the distance between cost and compensation, between rent and reality, between the lives you're sold and the life you actually live. This isn't just an economic divide, it's a psychological one. A slow erosion of hope, a quiet internal collapse. And yet, you keep moving, because standing still feels like giving up. But what if the truth is that moving isn't progress anymore? What if the path you're on was never meant to lead anywhere? The system isn't broken. It's functioning exactly as intended, to extract, to exhaust, to contain. And unless you see it clearly, you'll spend your life trying to win a game that was never yours to begin with. Look around. Everything tells you to keep running. More work, more hustle, more debt. But the finish line keeps moving. The house you wanted costs twice as much. The savings you counted on evaporate in inflation. The opportunities you dreamed of are snapped up by those with access to capital you'll never touch. And yet they tell you it's your fault. That you didn't plan well, that you didn't try hard enough. The truth is simpler and harsher. The game is rigged. The money you borrow, the loans you take, the credit you rely on, it's all a river flowing toward the wealthy. Every stimulus, every rescue, every policy is designed to reinforce that flow. They don't want equality. They want dependency. And dependency is profitable. The more you need, the more control they have. The richer they get, the harder it becomes for you to rise. You're trapped in a system that rewards the owners of assets while punishing the owners of labor. And as long as you chase the promises of financial freedom, they watch, they profit, they expand. This is not a cycle that will correct itself. It's a pattern etched into the blueprint of modern finance. And the question isn't if it will continue, it's whether you'll finally see it. Because once you do, You realize that survival isn't about running faster. It's about understanding the game and learning that sometimes the smartest move is not to play their way at all. The wealth is theirs to print. Your life is theirs to borrow. And until that changes, the gap only grows.